and welcome to the Front Row Movie Reviews, the podcast for people who actually like movies and TV. And welcome to episode 47. We are 3 episodes away from the half-century mark of Zone-i-Sodes, our retrospective of every episode of the Twilight Zone from the 1950s and 60s. I am Scott, and with me here, as usual, is...
Brandon Davis, a most unusual co-host.
That's my job. And yes, we are here to talk about Say Cheese and Die. Oh, I mean, that's the Goosebumps one that copied off this. We are here to talk about A Most Unusual Camera. This is an interesting one. I love the fact that we go from The Trouble with Templeton, and I know this wasn't supposed to be this way because Night of the Meek actually comes right after this in viewing order, but we did Night of the Meek a little earlier to meet with Christmas, but we're going to go from The Trouble with Templeton to this, and then next week we have Dust, which is a completely different tone change again. So, hooray for changing up on us there, Rod. Thank you so much. All right, well, let's talk a little bit about Most Unusual Camera. I'll give the synopsis first, and then we'll hear from Rod and roll from there. So, 2 thieves who are husband and wife, Chester and Paula, couldn't steal themselves out of a brown paper bag. And they decide that the best way to make some money is to steal from a curio shop because, there's some high-end items in those curio shops. Well, obviously, they find out that the items they stole were not worth anything. And they're about to cut their losses when they take a look at a strange camera that they found. They decide to take a picture with the camera and realize quickly that the camera is taking pictures that are of events that have not happened yet. They realize also that they can use this to their advantage. So they, along with her brother and brother-in-law who happened to show up randomly just at that moment, go to the horse track and decide to take pictures of the scoreboard to see, I don't know if it's called a scoreboard, I don't go to horse racing much, but you know what I'm talking about, to see the winners before they happen, and they clean it out, winning thousands of dollars. They didn't realize with butler at the apartment building they're at?
Yeah.
Question mark? The butler can speak French, and he realizes that the camera says that you only get 10 photos per person. And of course, they only have 2 photos left. Slapstick insights, and I got nothing on this. It all falls apart, and they fall out windows. The end.
Yeah.
It really just, much like my synopsis, it falls apart at the end. So let's talk.
Yeah.
Brandon,
well, here's what Rod.
Please.
Here's what Rod had to say, and it's funny that these kind of episodes he has the longest intros for some reason. I feel like he feels like he has to explain himself.
I'm really sorry. You have to do this, and it was written by Rod, so it is his fault.
Yes. Here's what he says. A hotel suite that, in this instance, serves as a den of crime. The aftermath of a rather minor event to be noted on a police blotter, an insurance claim, perhaps a 3-inch box on 12th page of the evening paper. Small addenda to be added to the list of the loot, a camera, a most unimposing addition to the flotsam and jetsam that it came with. Hardly worth mentioning, really, because cameras are cameras, some expensive, some purchasable at 5 and dime stores. But this camera, this one's unusual because in just a moment, we'll watch it inject itself into the destinies of 3 people. It happens to be a fact that the pictures that it takes can only be developed in the Twilight Zone.
This is one of those where I really should just let him do the synopsis and shut up because he just basically covers the whole damn thing right there. Okay, Brandon, let's see what you like, or get your first impressions of A Most Unusual Camera.
I honestly, and even it's been a few days since I watched it, and I still don't exactly know how to feel about it because on one hand, I like the performers. I think they're all good, and but I feel like with better material, they could have been better. There's something weird about this episode because it's slapsticky, but it's really, you've got people jumping out of windows at the end with this sort of funny Looney Tunes type music going on. And it just doesn't really add up to me. It's interesting. I was looking, and when I saw the name of the director on the episode, I thought this was directed by John Rich, because I had to look it up to make sure it was the same one. This is Emmy award-winning sitcom director John Rich, who directed majority of the episodes of The Dick Van Dyke Show and All in the Family. So we've got a very high-caliber sitcom director doing this, which explains probably some of the tone of it. But I just don't feel like the material that was written lives up to the tone they were trying to come across with this episode. It's very, very weird. I still don't know.
There's the quote for the episode. It's very, very weird.
But those are my first impressions.
When we were talking about Templeton off the air, I mentioned to you, Brandon, that, hey, just wait, you got slapstick humor next week, and your response was priceless, because it was, oh, really? And yeah. And it's not even really, I call it slapstick humor, but really it isn't, except for like 2 minutes of the episode. But this episode, it always strikes me that it's just such an oddball episode. And I know that's what they're going for. They're going for a comedy. They have characters in here that are completely unlikable in a fun way. It's not like they're evil or dastardly. It's just they're so stupid that they don't understand or can't they just can't figure out anything going on in the world. And you can tell that their life of crime is going to lead them out some skyscraper window sooner or later. Even if it's not with the camera, they're going to fall out a window sooner or later. I mean, hell, Paula can't even walk across a room without tripping over a cord. So these guys are doomed already. But I think you hit the nail on the head with the fact that what they were going for here, the material doesn't give them enough to make it. I mean, this it's an interesting idea. What if you have a camera that can see into the future? And obviously, most of us, even we don't want to admit it, the first thing we're going to do is find a way to gamble. I mean, you're going to take a picture of the lottery numbers at the gas station. You're going to go to the horse race. You're going to do something. You're going to take a picture of the blackjack table and see when they're going to hit 21 or not. But aside from that, what else do you do with it? Well, you have a strange guy show up and off you because he wants your money. Okay. What a twist. So yeah, this isn't one that I think of in the higher echelon, to say the least. So Brandon, what are some things?
I was going to say this makes Mr. Beavis look like a masterpiece.
Hey, sir, Mr. Beavis is a masterpiece. I stand behind Mr. Beavis, and we will have another episode that talks about the human condition, much like Mr. Beavis.
The comedy,
tomorrow, next week.
The comedy works. The comedy works in Mr. Beavis. I don't think the comedy works in this episode.
Okay,
so that's what it's.
How dare you, sir? How dare you? Okay, so I haven't had a chance to mention this, I don't think, but believe it or not, after the Mr. Beavis episode, one of our fans who will remain anonymous. I can't talk. No. One of our fans sent me a CD of Ziffer music. I kid you not. So I have a CD in my office of Ziffer music.
That's funny.
My intern looked at me when I started playing it on my computer and just thought I had gone insane. But I haven't. So thank you to the person, you know who you are. I appreciate it. My intern does not appreciate it, but I do. Okay, off of Mr. Beavis. Brandon, what are some of the positive things of a most unusual camera?
Well, as I said before, I like Chester and Paula. I like Fred Clark and Gene Carson, even though Gene Carson's voice can get a little grating sometimes.
What do you mean?
But I think they work well together, and it's one of those things where, had this been actual comedy, I think they would have been very funny together. And I like the chemistry between the two of them, and I like the concept of the episode. I mean, it's a good enough concept, as you mentioned. Goosebumps stole from it. Um, I like
And did a better
I
job
do,
with it, I might add.
yeah. I do like the concept of this camera that predicts stuff that's going to happen 5 minutes in the future, and you only get 10 pictures. You know how, of course, Pierre has to let us know that happens, but it's an interesting concept, and it's an interesting cast. And like I always said, I like when Rod takes risks. They don't always pay off, but I appreciate that he does, because we at least we don't get the same. We've noticed that as we track these episodes that Rod tends to go with the same 7 themes, plots over and over again. So when he gives you something unique and interesting, it's kind of a breath of fresh air. But some of these big risks that he takes don't always pay off, and this is one of those episodes. But it had ingredients that worked well. As I said, the cast is good, the concept is good, and the opening couple of scenes work, but as the greed gets a hold of them, and as we get toward the darker tones at the end of the episode, is when it starts to fall off for me. So I think the strengths of this episode
I see
are
what you did there.
the
It falls off.
so the strength of this episode really is some of the actors, the concept, and the first little bit of it. But then it starts to really the tone, and like I said, the tone and the material just don't mesh. But it had good ingredients going in.
Yeah, I think we're kind of in agreement on all of that there. So I'm just going to say ditto. Paula and Chester are fine. I do like just the hapless idiot kind of idea that they're not terrible. I mean, obviously they're terrible people, but they're not really terrible people. They're just stupid.
Yeah,
Now, Woodward, on the other hand, I don't understand where the hell he comes from, but I'll talk about Woodward in a minute. I do like the idea, and as we've said several times now, it's been done better in other forms and other material. But I can't help but laugh at a lot of this episode. As much as
yeah.
I look back and I'm like, oh my goodness, what was that? When I was watching this episode again for this, I laughed a lot. I laughed at Paula and Chester. I busted it when they fell out the window the first time. The two idiots. You see it. This is the other thing too. If you've never watched this episode, and Brandon, tell me if I'm wrong, but they telegraph the hell out of what's going to happen. The window's open.
They do.
They're jumping around the room, fighting each other, and they just tossed each other out the window. And I could not stop cracking up at that. My 7-year-old was watching it with me, and she kind of looked at me like, well, she gave me the "Are you my father?" look. Really? Did I have to have you as my dad? But so there's some humor in there that I enjoy. It's not a terrible episode, so that's a positive, I guess.
Yeah,
That's what I got.
it's not. It's not the fever of the chaser.
No, it is not the fever of the chaser. There's really no way that those two episodes could ever be. Well, yes, there is a way they can be topped, and we'll talk about it in 2020. What are some things that didn't work for you in the episode?
Well, we've talked a lot about it, but the last bit just doesn't work for me, because it could have been a really interesting sort of morality piece, but the goofiness of it really takes away. And like I said, you laugh at these people jumping to their deaths instead of really sort of thinking. And like I said, Chester and Paul aren't despicable people, so you really should feel bad that they are jumping to their deaths. But there's something just so goofy about it that it doesn't work. And I don't know, just the whole way everything sort of just falls apart, and it just gets so goofy, and these characters are just so dumb. It's like there's nothing redeemable to sort of grasp at. But I just don't. I can see where Rod was going, but I don't think that he hit the mark here. And like I said, when you're writing, well, and he didn't write all of them, but when you have 30 some episodes a season, you're going to have some turkeys, because you can't write yourself, out of a sticky situation all the time. But it's just one of those episodes that had good intentions at the beginning, but it just went way off to where it shouldn't have been.
It went right out the window. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, a lot of puns, but it's
The same pun over and over again. But what are you gonna do? Rod said it himself, and I've said this a couple times now, and I'm sure I'll say it a couple more times. But he said there were 3 really types of episodes for the Twilight Zone. There were very, very good episodes. There were very, very bad episodes, and there were episodes that were average. And it really was, 30%, 30%, 30%, which is good for a show, I think. And with that, I think this falls square into the middling category. It is not something that is atrocious. I'll probably watch it again, but it is not something that we're going to think about after we finish this podcast.
No.
For me, a couple of things that just don't work for me is, again, I want to know how the hell injecting Woodward randomly like that makes any sense at all. You could have tried a little bit. Instead of saying he just broke out of prison, you could have said,
he just shows up.
Yeah, I hope your dumbass brother-in-law doesn't show up again or something. He doesn't have to come out of prison. I think they're trying to make him more of a problem for them, but really the prison thing doesn't make a bit of difference. He could just be a bumbling idiot and do the exact same stuff. Yeah. The same thing goes with the other character that gets injected out of nowhere. The waiter is what he's coined as.
Pierre.
Yeah. They're in an apartment. They're obviously not doing very well for themselves because they can't steal anything correctly. So I don't understand how this apartment's going to have a doorman, let alone a butler, waiter, whatever the heck he is that shows up. And he is just there to move the plot in a direction to do anything. And that's one of the things the director, John Rich, points out in an interview that he did, that he felt that the problem with the episode is nothing happens.
Mm-hmm.
Truly, I mean, aside from everyone dying, nothing happens in this episode. We have a little bit of fisticuffs at the end, and we have a twist that, again, is seen a mile away. But in the grand scheme of things, it's a couple jokes and a couple puns streamed together to make an episode, and that doesn't really live up to what the Twilight Zone is, I don't believe. No. That being said, another thing that I just don't understand is what happened to Pierre at the end. Are we led to believe that the camera grew legs and pushed him? Did he trip just like Paula did? Did he decide it wasn't worth taking the money and running? I don't understand. I get the whole idea. The twist was there are 4 bodies down there. How are there 4? Yeah. Okay, I don't.
Well,
I don't
according to the plot synopsis on Wikipedia, it says he falls out of the window in shock upon his realization. So
I'd be kind of shocked too if I saw myself falling out of a window as the ground is speeding towards me and there are 3 bodies below me. I'd be a little shocked too. But still, that doesn't tell me how he dies. Well, I know how he dies. He hits the curb, but why does he die is what I'm looking for here. I have no answer for that. I'm sorry. Yeah, that's all I got. I love the fact that you can always tell a middle of the road episode, because when they're really good, we talk a lot. And when they're really bad, we talk more. And when they're middle of the road, these episodes are 20 minutes long. Okay, so let's do our final thoughts and our scores. For those of you who are just joining us, we rank these episodes on a scale of 1 to 10, and they are compared to other episodes of The Twilight Zone. So a 5 score would be an average episode of The Twilight Zone, which makes it a pretty good piece of television. A 10 would be one of the best Twilight Zone episodes of all time, which would make it one of the best TV episodes of all time. And a 1 would make it The Chaser, The Fever, or The Bewitching Pool. So, Brandon, give us your final thoughts and your score.
Well, this is an episode that this falls into the category of something that should have been better than what it was. It was a good premise. It had good cast. With the right tone, it could have been much better. It just went far off to where it shouldn't have gone. But it wasn't terrible. I mean, it's something that it wasn't provocative enough to make you think about it long after it's over. Um, I'm going to give it what I gave Trouble with Templeton last week. I'm giving it a 4.
Yep, I'm in the same boat. I have found that usually I give these kind of episodes 3s or 4s, and the 3s for me are the ones that have a problem that actually annoy me. Lateness of the Hour is one of those, the most recent 3 that really just annoyed the hell out of me. There's nothing in camera that annoys me. So I don't feel like I can give it a 3, but obviously I can't say it's an average episode because an average episode is better than this. So I'm giving it a 4 as well.
I feel like I'm giving lower scores in season 2 than I did in season 1, and for some reason I thought season 2 was going to be a superior season, but so far I feel like it's kind of
Well, I'm not going to
been hit
bear.
and miss.
I'm not going to bury the lead on this. I think season 2 is a superior season. We just haven't gotten there yet.
Okay, because we've had like 2 or 3 like really really good ones, and the rest have all been kind of meh. I feel like.
And I'm seeing that in our scores too. I think we are definitely having really high level episodes and really low level episodes. We haven't had a 5 since A Thing About Machines. The rest have been either low or high. And then the only other one that was a 5 for both of us was King 9 Will Not Return, which was the first episode of the season. But I love Dust. I have a lot to say about Dust.
I do too.
Yeah, so I think that's going to break it a little bit. And then there's some big ones coming up. I think I don't know if my opinion is going to be the general opinion, but Invaders, which is about 3 weeks away, is thought of as one of the best Twilight Zone episodes of all time. I have a special place in my heart, just like Beavis with Mr. Dingle the Strong. So we will be talking about that. And again, not to bury the lead, but one of my favorite episodes of all time is the Obsolete Man, and the Obsolete Man is coming up here in this season as well too.
Awesome.
That is an episode that is near and dear to my heart. So I think the best of season 2 is coming. You just got to bear with all the shot on shittios to get there.
Yeah.
Because we still have 6 of those.
Well, Night of the Meek was good. So at least there was a silver lining in there.
Absolutely. Well, as we talk about this journey continuing, it is now 2018, and we are nearly to our 1-year anniversary of this little road through the Twilight Zone, but we still have a long way to go. So you can join us by clicking the subscribe button if you're on YouTube, and click the notify button too, because we do these episodes live, and we love to hear from you in the chat room. And then also obviously give us a like. If you're listening to the podcast version of this, please be sure to subscribe as well, and then also give us a rating and a review on your podcast app of choice, be it iTunes, Stitcher, Podbean, whatever. And we're going to have some changes coming up in terms of the subscriptions on the podcast, but I'm not ready to talk to you about that, so I'll talk to you about that later. Stay tuned. Some good things are happening with the Front Row in many ways, including this show here. And then you can always find us at thefrontrowmoviereviews.com, and you can email us at thefrontrowmoviereviews@gmail.com. Until next week when we go into another Western. Oh, I'm sorry.
I've got Rod's final.
Yes, I'm trying to shut down Rod. Go ahead, Brandon.
It's okay. And this isn't as long. So, object known as a camera, vintage uncertain, origin unknown. But for the greedy, the avarice, the fleet of foot, who can run a 4-minute mile so long as they're chasing a fast buck, it makes believe that it's an ally, but it isn't at all. It's a beckoning come on for a quick walk around the block in the Twilight Zone.
Do. And I hope that R.L. Stine paid the licensing fee to use the same camera, because it really is the same thing. Well, okay. Until next time, I am Scott, and with me as always is
Brandon Davis.
And as I mentioned already, we will see you in the Old West next week. Have a good one.
Can't wait.